The old man used to say the river remembers. And he was right. Every now and then, I'd kneel by the cool current, trace a name carved deep into a slick river stone, and feel a connection to folks long gone. But today was different. My fingers brushed over Elias, then froze. Right beside it, clear as a bell, was Lena. A name I'd never heard, etched by a hand I didn't know, yet tied to mine on a stone pulled from the river's cold heart. A shiver, colder than the water, ran straight through me. Lena. Who was she? And why was her name forever linked to mine? The sun beat down on Elias's ranch, just like any other summer day. Dust devils danced across the dry pasture, and the distant lowing of cattle was a familiar hum. He was out mending a fence, the rhythmic clang of hammer on wire a steady companion, when his dog, a scruffy but loyal border collie named Rusty, started barking, a sharp, insistent sound that cut through the afternoon's quiet. Rusty rarely barked like that unless something was truly amiss. Elias, a man carved from the same rugged land he worked, straightened up, his hand instinctively going to the worn leather of his revolver. His eyes, the color of a stormy sky, scanned the horizon. Nothing. Just the endless stretch of sun-baked earth and the shimmering heat haze. But Rusty kept at it, his barks growing more frantic, his gaze fixed on the creek bed that snaked through Elias's property. Elias, always calm, always observing, walked toward the creek, his boots crunching on dry leaves. He knelt by the trickling water, the sound of the stream a welcome respite from the oppressive heat. That's when he saw it. Not a person, not an animal, but a stone. Smooth, gray, and half submerged, it looked like any other rock in the creek bed. But something about Rusty's agitation, the way the dog whined and pawed at the water, urged Elias to reach for it. He pulled it from the cool water, and that's when his world tilted. Etched deep into the stone, clear and unmistakable, were two names, Elias and Lena. His name, and a woman's name he'd never seen before, never heard. A name that felt both alien and strangely familiar, like a ghost from a dream. Elias's calloused thumb traced the unfamiliar letters. His heart, usually a steady drumbeat, skipped. This wasn't some random carving. This was too precise, too deliberate. A cold knot tightened in his stomach. Who was Lena? And why was her name, along with his, on this ancient stone, pulled from a river that knew secrets older than any man? The unexpected discovery felt like a tremor before an earthquake. He stood, the stone heavy in his hand, the setting sun painting the sky in fiery hues, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to mock the sudden unease in his soul. This quiet, solitary life he'd built, it felt like it was about to unravel, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him, that this was only the beginning. The stone felt heavier with each step back towards the ranch, its smooth surface now a constant, unsettling presence in Elias's palm. The cattle, usually a comforting sight, seemed to watch him with knowing eyes. He spent the evening by the fire, turning the stone over and over, the flickering light making the names dance. Lena, who in this vast, lonely territory knew his name and hers, and felt compelled to carve them together. The routine of supper, the quiet clinking of utensils against tin, felt hollow. Even Rusty, usually curled at his feet, seemed to sense the shift, his gaze fixed on Elias with an unusual intensity. The next morning, Elias rode out early, not to check fences or cattle, but to the nearest town, Redemption Gulch. It wasn't much. A general store, a saloon, a smithy, and a handful of dusty houses. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. He headed straight for Yet's general store, the only place where old man Jed, a walking encyclopedia of local gossip and history, might have an answer. Jed, a man whose face was a roadmap of wrinkles, looked up from behind his counter, his eyes twinkling. "Well, Elias, what brings you to town? Not often you venture this far from your solitude." Elias placed the stone on the counter. Jed squinted, his expression shifting from genial curiosity to a profound stillness. He picked up the stone, his gnarled fingers tracing the names. His usual chatter died. The silence in the store was thick, broken only by the creak of the floorboards. "Lena," Jed finally mumbled, his voice a low rasp. "Ain't heard that name in a long time." Elias felt a jolt. "You know her?" Jed shook his head slowly. "Not exactly. Heard tailies, old tailies. Before my time, even. A family, settled up north near the Whispering Pines. Disappeared without a trace. Said their names were etched on stones, buried by the river. A prophecy, some called it." The word prophecy hung in the air, a cold gust in the dusty store. Elias felt a prickle of unease. Prophecy about what? Jed met his gaze, his eyes ancient and knowing. About two souls, destined to meet, bound by something beyond this world. And their meeting, it would change things. For good or ill, no one ever knew. Jed paused. Then his eyes flickered to the names on the stone. "You sure you want to go chasing ghosts, Elias? Some things are best left buried." The old man's words were a warning, a heavy weight that settled on Elias's shoulders. But the stone, still warm from Yet's touch, seemed to hum with an undeniable pull. The river had carried Lena's name to him, and now it felt like it was calling him further into the unknown. Elias knew then the easy life he'd known was gone. He had lost the comfort of his predictable routine, replaced by a haunting mystery that demanded answers. Yet's words echoed in Elias's mind as he rode north, leaving Redemption Gulch in a cloud of dust. The landscape slowly shifted, the dry plains giving way to rolling hills, then to the dense, whispering pines Jed had mentioned. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Every creak of his saddle, every rustle of leaves, seemed to carry a whisper of the past. He remembered his own father, a stoic man who rarely spoke of his youth, but who carried a sadness in his eyes that Elias never understood. He thought of the small, faded photograph tucked away in an old trunk, a woman with eyes that mirrored his own, smiling softly. His mother, who died giving him life, a shadow in his memory. A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, stirring a memory Elias hadn't thought of in years. He was a boy, no older than 7, digging in the dirt near the old riverbed on his father's land. His small hand had brushed against something smooth and cold. He pulled it out, a stone, just like the one he now carried, but blank. His father had found him, holding the stone, and for the first time, Elias saw fear in his father's eyes. "Bury it, son," his father had said, his voice rough. "Don't ever speak of it." Elias, bewildered, had buried it, the strange fear in his father's voice chilling him to the bone. Now, that memory, long suppressed, surfaced with a clarity that hit him like a physical blow. Was that why his father was so guarded, so distant? Was he running from something tied to these stones, to this very mystery? The old hurt, the unspoken questions about his mother and his father's silence began to surface. A flicker of anger, long buried, ignited within him. Had his father known about these names, about this fate, and kept it from him? The path narrowed, leading deeper into the forest, and the pines grew denser, their branches intertwined overhead, blocking out the sky. The familiar scent of pine gave way to something else, something ancient and damp, a smell that hinted at secrets hidden for centuries. He came upon a clearing, a silent, overgrown space where the trees seemed to lean in as if listening. In the center, almost swallowed by the relentless march of nature, stood the crumbling remains of a stone chimney, all that was left of a forgotten homestead. This had to be it. The place Jed spoke of, Lena's home. As he dismounted, the choice weighed heavily on him. To turn back now, to ignore the river's call and the whispers of the past, would be the sensible thing to do. To ride away and forget Lena, forget the prophecy, and return to his solitary, predictable life. But the image of his father's fearful eyes, the echoing silence about his mother, and the undeniable pull of the stone in his pocket urged him forward. He had always followed his gut, his reason. But now, his heart, stirred by a mystery that resonated with his own untold history, clamored louder. He felt a profound sense of destiny, a path laid out long before he was born. He stepped into the overgrown clearing, his choice made, knowing that sometimes the heart's whispers lead to the greatest truths. The air in the clearing grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and sharp like old blood. Elias dismounted, his hand already on the grip of his revolver. The crumbling chimney stood like a sentinel, and around it, swallowed by time and undergrowth, were scattered remains of a life abruptly ended. A rusted pail, a broken wooden doll, a child's shoe. The hairs on Elias's neck pricked. This wasn't just a forgotten homestead. It was a grave. A twig snapped behind him. Elias spun, his gun drawn in one fluid motion. Standing at the edge of the clearing, partially obscured by the shadows of the pines, was a man. Tall, gaunt, with eyes that held the cold, calculating glint of a predator. He wore buckskins, and a long, wicked knife was sheathed at his hip. "So, you found it," the man rasped, his voice like gravel. The river always carries what's meant to be found. Elias's gaze was steady. "Who are you?" The man stepped forward, a faint, unsettling smile playing on his lips. "They called me Silas, and I've been waiting for you, Elias, or rather for the one who carries that stone." He gestured with his chin towards Elias's pocket, where the Lena stone lay. "You see, Lena, she was my sister, and our names were etched, just like yours and hers. A prophecy, a curse, I called it. Said our fates were tied to protect a secret that would shake the very foundations of this land." A chill ran down Elias's spine. What secret? Silas laughed, a dry, bitter sound. The secret of what truly happened to us, of what happened to her, and the price that must be paid for it. His hand went to his knife. "You, Elias, are the key, the final piece, and you will lead me to what I seek." The confrontation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Silas's eyes held a manic intensity, a deep-seated rage that had festered for decades. Elias knew he was facing a man consumed by a past he couldn't outrun, a man who saw him not as a person, but as a tool. "I don't know anything about a secret," Elias stated, his voice calm but his mind racing. "Oh, but you will," Silas sneered, lunging forward with a speed that belied his gaunt frame. The knife gleamed in the dappled sunlight. Elias dodged, the blade whistling past his ear, feeling the cold breath of death. He fired, the shot echoing through the quiet clearing, but Silas was unnervingly fast, a shadow in the trees. The fight was brutal, a dance of desperation and honed aggression. Elias, usually precise with his shots, found himself facing a phantom, a man who moved with an almost supernatural grace. He took a glancing blow to his arm, the pain sharp, but his focus never wavered. Then, everything went black. Elias felt a searing pain in his head, the world spinning. He hit the ground hard, his vision blurring. He saw Silas standing over him, the knife raised, his face stood in a triumphant snarl. "The river carries all names," Silas whispered, his voice a chilling echo. "And now yours will join hers, in blood." Just as the blade descended, a shot rang out, not from Elias's gun, but from somewhere beyond the trees. Silas staggered, a look of shocked disbelief on his face, before collapsing in a heap. Elias, his head throbbing, struggled to focus. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, rifle in hand, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and grim determination. She knelt beside Silas, checking for a pulse, then looked up at Elias, her face pale. "He was my brother," she whispered, her voice cracking, "and I had to do it. For Lena." The forest was silent now, save for the whisper of the wind through the pines. Elias lay on the ground, the ache in his head a dull, throbbing drumbeat. His arm throbbed where Silas's knife had grazed him, a constant reminder of how close he'd come to the end. The woman who had saved him, a stranger with haunted eyes, sat a few feet away, her rifle across her lap, staring into the middle distance. Her name, she finally offered, was Alara. Another name, a new connection in this tangled web of fate. He noticed the deep lines around Alara's eyes, the way her shoulders slumped, heavy with a burden Elias couldn't yet comprehend. Despite the presence of another, Elias felt the familiar sting of his cowboy's solitude. Even with a shared moment of life and death, the vastness of his journey, the unanswered questions, still isolated him. He was wounded, yes, physically, but more so emotionally. The past, revealed in such a brutal fashion, had left him raw. His father's silence, his mother's ghost, Lena, Silas, and now Alara, it was a maelstrom of intertwined destinies. He needed to reevaluate everything. Alara finally spoke, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. Silas, he was obsessed. He believed the river stones held a power, a key to a vast fortune hidden by our ancestors. He thought Lena had found it before she disappeared. He thought you, Elias, were the last link, a final name in a long line that would lead him to it. Elias frowned, pushing himself up, his head swimming. Fortune? That's what this was about? Alara shook her head, a bitter smile touching her lips. Not just gold. They spoke of a connection to the very earth, a hidden spring of life, and the knowledge to unlock its secrets. It was a fever dream, but Silas believed it. She paused, her gaze distant. My family, we were caretakers of the stones, tasked with ensuring the knowledge was never used for selfish gain. But Silas, he twisted it. He saw only power. A faint light, barely discernible, glimmered from under a moss-covered boulder near the crumbled chimney. Alara pointed. That's it. The last chance. The source of his obsession. But it comes with a risk, Elias. A very high risk. The stories say only those with pure hearts can approach it without consequence. And those who seek to use its power for ill, they are consumed. Elias looked at the glimmer, then back at Alara, whose face was etched with exhaustion and resignation. He remembered the blank stone he'd found as a boy, the fear in his father's eyes. Was this the secret his father had buried? The very thing he had tried to protect Elias from? The river, which had carried Lena's name to him in the first chapter, now offered a choice, a final dangerous revelation. The river had brought him here, to this quiet, tragic clearing. He felt a surge of doubt, a deep-seated apprehension. Was he truly ready for what lay beneath that boulder? But also a stubborn courage. He had come too far, felt too much, to turn back now. He needed to know, for Lena, for himself, for the silent memory of his father. He stood, a grim determination setting his jaw, and walked towards the moss-covered stone, towards the final reckoning. Elias pushed the moss-covered boulder aside with a grunt, revealing not a hidden fortune, but a small, deeply carved recess in the earth. Inside lay a single smooth river stone, unlike any he had seen. It wasn't etched with names, but with intricate, flowing symbols that seemed to glow with a faint internal light. As he reached for it, a profound sense of peace washed over him, a warmth spreading through his limbs, soothing the throbbing in his head and the ache in his arm. It was as if the very essence of the land, of life itself, flowed into him. He felt connected, not just to Lena, or to Silas and Alara, but to generations, to the river, to the earth itself. Alara watched him, her eyes wide with wonder. The river's heart, she whispered. It's not gold. It's the balance, the knowledge, the true secret of our family. As Elias held the stone, images flashed in his mind. Lena, a young woman with a kind smile, tending to her garden. Silas, a child, full of light, before darkness consumed him. He saw his own father, a younger man, kneeling by this very spot, his face etched with a quiet burden, protecting this secret, not out of fear, but out of a deep sense of duty. He understood then his father's silence, his distant nature. He had been a guardian, just as Elias now was. His mother, too, appeared, not as a fading photograph, but vibrant, her laughter echoing in his mind, connected to this land, to this ancient knowledge. The silence that followed was profound, a sacred stillness in the heart of the ancient forest. Elias was transformed. The old loneliness, the quiet burden of his solitary life, had lifted. He hadn't found a fortune, nor had he fully unraveled every thread of the prophecy, but he had found something far more precious: understanding, connection, and a sense of belonging he hadn't known he lacked. The river, which had carried all names, had finally delivered his to its true meaning. He looked at Alara, a silent understanding passing between them. They were both children of this land, touched by its ancient secrets, now bound by shared experience and a common purpose. The path ahead was unclear, but no longer was he walking it alone. The world hadn't returned to what it was, but Elias was no longer the man who had found a name on the stone. He was a guardian now, a keeper of a profound truth. He looked back at the clear, quiet stream nearby, the water flowing ever onward. He didn't need to carve his name into its stones anymore. The river already carried it, in its currents, in its whispers, in the very heartbeat of the earth. He turned, the stone warm in his hand, and walked away from the clearing, a new purpose burning in his soul. The river carries all names, he thought, the words a quiet echo in his mind, and some are meant to live forever, not just on stone, but in the heart.